Welcome to the Friends of Dan Music Podcast. I'm Dan Miles. You've been listening to the music of Derryl Gabel, who's joining us now on the phone from Gulf Breeze, Florida. Hi, Derryl.
Hey, Dan. Hey, all you guitar fanatics.
All right. That was called Song for Jesse. It's from Derryl's first album, Visions and Dreams. He also has an album called Giant Steps, which we'll be playing some tracks from later in the show. I want to start by asking how long you've been playing and if there was any specific event that inspired you to take up the guitar.
Let's see. I've been playing for around 25 years, off and on, I suppose. As far as what inspired me to pick up the guitar, it was Eddie Van Halen. When I saw the Jump video on MTV, I thought the way he played was just like magical.
Allan Holdsworth once said that he never got much radio play because jazz stations said he was too rock and rock stations said he was too jazz. Have you had similar issues with people defining your own niche?
I guess most people have. I've heard them call my music more, I guess, rock fusion. As far as what's on the Visions and Dreams album, most of the tunes really I would consider kind of a rock fusion. And when I did that album, I didn't want to go too much on the fusion side because I wanted to appeal to a wider audience. I don't know. I think the next album I do, even, I might have, a few hardcore fusion tunes on there, but I think most of it I would want to be able to connect with more people, instead of just the small fusion group.
Okay, well, let's give the listeners something else here to connect to, listen to some more music. This one is from Derryl's Giant Steps album, and it's called Miles from Home. Well, I think what impresses me most about that particular composition is how you continue to introduce new themes that I think are each strong enough to base an entire tune on by themselves. Did all of those parts flow out of you naturally, or do you sometimes cut and paste various musical ideas to see if they fit together?
Well, I originally wrote that tune back in 1990, before I even knew what cut and paste was. Yeah, I was, whenever I composed that tune, I was even just very green on composing even, and I didn't really understand, chord progressions and, of course, the way I do now, and so I just did the best I could with the knowledge that I had. And now that tune that you just played, though, is actually a newer version, because the original version that I recorded in '91, that actually was called Sweat and Bullets, and that's the tune that won me the George Lynch gig back around that time.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about George Lynch in a minute.
Okay.
Back to that track, there's some kind of long, complex runs in there that you had harmonized. Did you use an effect to do that, or did you actually overdub matching lines?
I overdubbed.
Wow, that makes it even more impressive. Have you ever considered incorporating vocals, or have you just always been committed to instrumental music?
Actually, I was in a vocal band in the early '90s. The band was called Big Trouble, and I was in big trouble.
Okay.
And so I had messed around with the vocal thing for a little while, and one of the vocal tunes is on my old demo CD that's available at my website. It's called Journey Through Time.
Since your songs are instrumentals and don't have lyrics, how do you usually come up with titles for them?
It really depends on what I'm going through at the moment. For instance, whenever I originally wrote Miles from Home, originally it was called Sweat and Bullets back in '91, and I used to work outside doing landscaping and irrigation maintenance and stuff, so there was a lot of sweating involved. And then later I re-recorded that and made it more like fusiony or jazzier, and I happened to get the name from just walking through Blockbuster, looking for a movie to pick out, and I saw this movie called Miles from Home, and I thought, that really fits, because at the time I was living in West Palm Beach, and my hometown is Pensacola. So I thought, that's a fitting title. So it's just usually what's going on in my life, how I pick a title.
I think with Blow by Blow and Wired, Jeff Beck is the one who proved there was a pretty significant market for experimental type instrumental guitar music. And for me personally, Ronnie Montrose's Open Fire album was a big influence, particularly his version of Town Without Pity. And of course nowadays, Joe Satriani's Steve Vai, Eric Johnson, and a number of other guitar heroes release that type of album all the time. Which guitarists do you think have influenced your own playing the most?
The most, earlier on, of course, it started out with Van Halen, and then a friend of mine introduced me to Yngwie, and when I first heard Yngwie, I was just like, oh my God, I didn't think you could get any better than Van Halen, and I really shouldn't say that. I mean, I guess, I don't know, play faster.
No, I know what you mean. I first heard Yngwie, and it was like Michael Schenker 10 times as fast.
Yeah, that really, the very first thing I heard of Yngwie was the Steeler album, the solo he did on the Steeler album, this unaccompanied solo, and it blew my mind, because I didn't know anybody could play like that. And but let's see, from Yngwie, then later it became Tony McAlpine. Wore Out, the Maximum Security album, and And then I got into Greg Howe and the Cacophony, Jason Becker, Marty Friedman, and Michael E. Firkins. That kind of his style inspired me to write the Sweat and Bullets / Miles from Home instrumental. And what I would do is I would read the interviews in guitar magazines of the players that I like, and they would say, well, yeah, I think so and so is the best, or I listened to so and so, and I thought, well, I got to check these guys out. Like I remember Van Halen, he would say, the best player in my book is Alan Holdsworth.
Mm-hmm.
But like the first time I heard Alan, I think it was back in, it was when the Guitar Player magazine came out with the sound page that had, I think it was Devil Take the Hindmost. And anyway, I heard that, and I don't know, I didn't understand it at the time. All the, outside type playing and, stuff that he was doing, and I couldn't appreciate it back then, and it wasn't until later on that, I got into Alan Holdsworth. But like around, I guess, I don't know, 91, 92 maybe, I met this guy where I worked, one of the residents, and he had like all these old jazz vinyl albums.
Mm-hmm.
And he let me borrow them. They were like Coltrane and Charlie Parker. And, if I may back up here, I was studying with this jazz guitar player in 1990 named Rich Medell. He taught me like how to do like chord melody stuff and from the real book, Jazz Standards and all. But he would talk to me about Charlie Parker, and at the time I think I was really into like Jason Becker, Marty Friedman. And so I went out and bought this Charlie Parker, the Best of Charlie Parker album, and I listened to it, and before I put it on, I'm expecting to hear, Jason Becker on the saxophone or something,
right,
like that. But I'm not hearing that, and, I don't know, it was kind of boring to me, and I'm like, what? I didn't get it at the time. So moving forward in time, so I guess it was 92, the guy let me borrow these albums, and so what I did was I transferred them to cassette, because where I worked outside and all, I'd have this, Sony Walkman, and I, listened to it all day while I was working outside. But anyway, so I don't know, it was like a light switch or something, and I heard Charlie Parker is called The Essential Charlie Parker.
Mm-hmm.
It's like one of my favorite Charlie Parker albums. And I heard that, and like I say, it was like a light switch, and it was like the most unbelievable playing. I'm getting chill bumps right now just thinking about it. It was like the most unbelievable playing, solos that I'd ever heard. And I'm like, what happened? Why am I getting it now? And I just totally missed it earlier, like a year or two earlier. So from there, I went back and listened to Alan Holdsworth, and I started to, like it more, and just got more and more into Alan, and then, Scott Henderson, and let's see, so I mainly for a while just listened to Alan Holdsworth, Scott Henderson, Frank Gabel, started buying Brecker albums. And then I got into Pat Metheny. He's like one of my all-time favorite guitarists. I love Pat Metheny. His music, I would say out of everybody, just his music has the most profound effect on me. It's just spiritual almost. His melodies and progressions. Not to mention his awesome solos,
Oh yeah, I've seen him in concert several times, and I've got all of his classic CDs. I know exactly what you mean. He seems to be in a space all by himself, and Lyle Mays, some credit for that too.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Well, Scott Henderson and Frank Gambale and Alan Holdsworth, I'm not surprised to hear you say that. Van Halen and Yngwie, I didn't hear so much in your playing. I heard maybe a little Steve Morris, maybe a little Steve Lukather, and of course Alan Holdsworth himself said that it was Coltrane. He wanted to be a horn player. He didn't really like guitars, and he was trying to play the guitar like a horn. So it's funny you say that Charlie Parker, and I think the first Charlie Parker I heard was Ornithology. and My Little Suede Shoes and Just Friends and some of the work you did with the strings.
That tune, Just Friends, that was like one of my first favorite Charlie Parker tunes off that, The Essential Charlie Parker.
And was it from the album you did with string section?
Yes.
Yeah, I know exactly the recording you mean, and it's like perfect. What could be any better? Everything about that track's perfect to me.
Yeah.
You mentioned George Lynch. I know that you won a contest and recorded a collaboration with him. You want to tell a story of how that came about?
Yeah, there was a contest many years ago, back in, October 90, or I don't know, sometime way back then. And anyway, it was Win a Dream date, recording date with George Lynch, and one of my students had told me about it. He's like, you ought to enter that, and I thought, nah, I wouldn't win, and there's so many great guitar players out there, and he's like, just do it anyway. He's like, if you don't, I'm going to send your tape in, anyway. And I said, okay, yeah, I'll go ahead. So I went ahead and entered it, and I just forgot all about it. And then one day I come home from work, and I get this phone call, and he's like, hey, Derryl, this is George Lynch. I just wanted to tell you that, we're listening to your demo now, and, he said a lot of positive things, and I was like, are you kidding me? He's like, no, this is really George Lynch. And I dropped the phone, and I ran in there. My wife was in the shower, and I'm like, hey, hon, George Lynch is on the phone. So I get back on the phone, and anyway, he's like, yeah, we can fly you and your wife out to California, and you can record a solo with me. And I'm like, yeah, cool. So yeah, George would. He called me up later, and he's like, here, I wanted you to hear, the track that you're going to be playing on. This is before the demo tape arrived. And he was letting me hear this acoustic solo stuff. Mm-hmm. He's like, this isn't actually me playing. This is actually the sound engineer. I haven't cut my solo yet. George is a joker. He likes to joke around. And he's like, so what do you think about John's playing? And I'm like, dang, man, you ought to have him on the album. He sounds great. And he's like, and then he told me, no, that was mine. And I'm like, wow, yeah, that's great. And originally we were going to do, acoustic solos. And I was kind of worried about that because my playing was more geared toward electric. Mm-hmm. And so I really started working, I'm like, man, I better get my, picking and sweeping chops, in high gear. So anyway, and then later, when the demo tape arrived, he's like, we're going to do electric solos and all that. And so I had about a day before I had to fly out there. And originally, I got to play 4 solos, and it was a duel back and forth, like in the middle section. Mm-hmm. And by the way, this is the original Tierra del Fuego is on my Giant Steps album. Okay. But the one where it has all 4 of my solos. But so in the middle of the tune, we play solos back and forth, and then at the outro, we duel back and forth on the original. And the solos that I did in the middle section were actually worked out ahead of time, because mm-hmm. I figured, I'm going to be so nervous when I get in there mm-hmm. that, I probably need to work something out so I just, don't sound so terrible. And, but the outro solos, that was improvised, and I wasn't even expecting that I was, because he just said we were going to play in the middle, back and forth, and that's it, and when he said to do that, I'm like, oh no. But it turned out cool. So
the version on George Lynch's Sacred Groove album is different. It's shorter than yours on Giant Steps?
Yes. Well, I mean, what he did was he erased 3 of my solos.
He was intimidated by you. I think you scared him with your playing, and he didn't want anybody to know you were that good.
No, I don't know. But George is a good guy. I mean, he just probably wanted to take the best one. I think he chose the best one out of all the ones that I did.
Well, I'm holding the liner notes for Giant Steps in my hand, and I see, Tierra del Fuego is a closing track, and you've actually got the times written out where he's soloing and where you're soloing. So that makes it nice and easy. We're not actually going to play that track, but we are going to play something right now from Giant Steps, and you'd mentioned Charlie Parker and John Coltrane, and this one has got a nice bebop feel to it. Let's take a listen. It's called Countdown. Well, somebody had asked me to name that tune. I probably would have called it Moving Target because the chord progression sounds like it's constantly running away from you. What motivated you to try and tackle such a challenging piece?
That's a very good question. What had happened was it all started because I used to visit the Frank Gambale forum, and I would go up to the forum and chat with the guys and try to promote my stuff, which I don't know if that was the right thing to do, but I was also trying to get Frank to listen to my stuff since I was a fan of his and give me some type of positive comment that I could put on my review page and on my website. So I asked Frank if he would check out my tune Visions and Dreams on my Visions and Dreams album. I asked him to listen to that tune because, kind of heavy fusion, and it was almost dedicated to Alan Holdsworth and Frank Gambale. And because I was a big fan of that album, Truth and Shredding, which had Frank and Alan kind of dueling back and forth. And
I remember that one.
So anyhow, I wanted him to listen to that, and he didn't. He listened to this tune entitled Friends, which is an easy tune to play over. And so his comment was, because he said, I saw this video of Derryl, video clip of Derryl, on Friends, and he said something to the effect of, very skilled playing. I can hear the Alan Holdsworth influence. I don't hear any of my influence. And then he went on to say, but what separates the men from the boys, is playing over complex changes. And, he kind of went on that, that type of thing, and that bothered me because I'm like, man, that's why I wanted you to listen to Visions and Dreams.
Exactly, yeah.
And so I'm like, well, what tune could I play, that, to kind of put this to rest? Not that I was, some great player over changes, but, I was going to make an attempt anyway. So I thought, well, Giant Steps, everybody knows that the Giant Steps is a difficult tune to play over. So I got the Jamie Aebersold backings, and I worked on that for I'm not joking, man, for 3 months. That's all I did, man. I didn't work on anything else. I just worked on improvising over those changes until I knew them as if I was playing in one key, not even having to look at the guitar. So then, I finally recorded it, and then, went back to the Gambale forum, and I'm like, hey, guys, check out my version of Giant Steps. And, he didn't comment, and at the time I was also hanging out at the Gnarly Geezer forum. Alan, when he came out with 16 Men of Pain album, he was with, Gnarly Geezer Records, and they had the forum. And so I went over there and had the guys there check it out. And one guy said, hey, man, if you think Giant Steps is hard, you ought to try Countdown. It's twice as hard. I was like, wow, okay, I didn't know that. And so I gave that a shot. And since since Countdown uses the same cycle as Giant Steps, but it uses it in different, how should I put it, different key centers or whatever. I don't know. But I can explain it to you like this. Giant Steps basically goes through 3 key centers, whereas Countdown, even though it uses the Giant Steps cycle, it goes through a total of, in my mind anyway, 7 key centers. And anyhow, since it uses that Giant Step cycle, it didn't take me as long to get to where I could play through Countdown. So I made a recording of that, and then went back to the Gambale forum. And nothing from Frank, didn't say anything, but Eddie Korolnick, a longtime friend of Alan Holdsworth, his old road manager or something, he asked me to send him a CD of that, and because he wanted to play it for Alan. And Alan's comment was, it's like looking in the mirror. But what he went on to say is basically he doesn't know where I've been, and he doesn't know where I'm going. And I don't know, Eddie was trying to explain it to me, something to the effect of, I've been there, done that, and, he's kind of trying to copy what I'm doing, but he doesn't know where I'm going or something. But in my defense, all the licks that I play, for instance, in Countdown, I only rip Alan off one time. I use one of his licks, and the lick is from City Nights on the Secrets album. And near the end of his solo, he plays a really cool, one of his signature type sounding licks, and that's the lick that I put in Countdown.
It's funny, you're trying to get the attention of Frank Gambale, and instead you went over his head and got Alan Holdsworth's attention.
Yeah, but I mean, I want to say, for the record, I'm nowhere near these guys. I think they're one of the, those guitar players are, one of the best guitar players around, and I have a long way to go.
Well, you're further down the road than I am, most of the people listening to this. In fact, I'm sure a lot of guitar players who are listening to your playing and listening to you talk are thinking, well, it's fine for Derryl, but I can't play like that. I never could. But actually, Derryl believes you can and has written a comprehensive technique book and produced an excellent series of instructional DVDs with titles like Chordal Mysteries Revealed, Cool Legato Phrases, Supersonic Sweeping, and my own personal favorite, Creative Tapping Techniques. And based on the fact that you've released 2 CDs of your music, but 8 instructional DVDs, I get the impression you're more into teaching than performing. Is that true?
Well, I found that making these instructional DVDs was very, I don't know, financially lucrative. You know, they've been selling really well, even so much to the point to where I've been able to quit my day job.
Wow.
Here recently and just, you know, do this full time. And my albums, like Visions and Dreams and Giant Steps, they don't sell, you know, quite as well as my instructional DVDs. And I just want to say, too, that I don't know a whole lot, but I tell you what, I mean, what I do know, you know, I'll be happy to share with you, share with you anything that I've been able to discover or learn, from other players like, say, Alan or whatever. But I remember growing up, starting out playing guitar, these guys that were better than me, they were afraid to show me anything. And, I didn't really understand that. I mean, whenever I would learn something new, I couldn't wait to, I was on the phone, calling somebody because I couldn't wait to share it. Like, hey, man, check this out. I just learned this, because I thought that was part of the fun, besides you learning something, sharing it with somebody. And now to get paid for it, is even better.
Yeah, well, you've got a more generous spirit. I mean, I've met a lot of musicians and guitar players that are possessive of things. I remember Van Halen himself, the legend goes, in those early days, probably playing at the Whiskey or something on the Strip, used to play with his back to the audience because he didn't want people to know how he's doing his hammering, until they could get that first album recorded so he could get the credit for it, and I guess he'd open for people like Ted Nugent, and Ted Nugent would plug into Eddie Van Halen's rig to see if just plugging into his amp would do the trick, and no, you got to play it a certain way. Well, for the people out there who want to even take it to another level, Derryl also offers private lessons online. How would you describe the age range and skill level of your students?
The age range is probably early 20s to mid 50s, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
And skill level, I just recently got this new student. His name is Josh Rinaldi, and he's very good. He's got a lot of technique. I'm just kind of trying to help him harness it, I suppose, and teaching him about improvising, and he's wanting to learn about the outside playing and stuff. So I'm showing him that, but he's got a lot of technique.
Well, can he play Countdown?
Not yet, but I know that he keeps it up. He will be one day.
Well, to find out more about Derryl and his music, you can go to his website. You're going to want to listen carefully to this because neither his first or last name is spelled the way you might expect. You're going to go to www.derrylgabel.com. So it's not Derryl with an A or Gable like Clark Gable. It's derrylgabel.com. Even if you're not a guitar player, I recommend going to his site and checking out the clips he's posted, because I think you're going to find, just despite his modesty, I think just watching his sheer command of the instrument, I find pretty inspirational. There are a number of ways you can buy Derryl's products, but his preference is for you to deal directly with him, which makes sense since he's the one who has all his merchandise in one convenient location. And I also encourage you at a minimum to get his 2 music CDs. If you're a guitarist, you'll want to check out at least one of his DVDs. And if you're not a guitarist, but you know someone who is, and I think we all know someone who's a guitar player, just, imagine what an eye-opening gift one of Derryl's awesome DVDs or CDs would make. We're going to finish up now with one of my personal favorite Derryl Gabel tracks. It's called All Right, and it's from his Visions and Dreams CD. Derryl, thanks for being my guest today.
Dan, thank you so much for inviting me and having me on your show and giving me this opportunity to talk to you and the folks out there. One thing I want to encourage everyone to do, if they do go to my site, please check out my testimony page. If you're into studying the Bible or have any type of Bible questions or even life questions, I'd encourage you to go to the testimonies page and check out the links that I have there. One in which is a prophecy seminar, which has changed my life, and I just wanted to share that with you all.
This podcast was recorded at Mojo Recording Studio in Phoenix, Arizona. It was engineered by Mike Post. As always, thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.